All right, hello, and thanks very much for checking out a bit of What Was That Radio. And in this conversation with, my guest is Cale of St. Asonia, a fella who has been in the music community and industry for over 25 years, whether he was guitar teching for 3 Days Grace at the start, playing bass with Thornley, doing his thing with Art of Dying, or in this case, joining St. Asonia approaching 4 years ago and getting the chance to do music full-time with his cousin Adam, having done bits and bobs over the years. Absolutely, yes, but never having that absolute slam dunk, this is what we do now, we're in the same band together situation. I'll be frank with you, we just wrapped our chat. It's June the 30th, 2022. Their new EP Introvert comes out July 1st, which is tomorrow. And I drink usually a couple of these full of tea during our conversations. I did try recording this intro, restarting it about 20 times because I was holding in, needing to go to the bathroom. I've now relieved myself of all urine, and I am immediately nailing this intro. So it just goes to show, listen to your body, right? Because sometimes it holds the key to the next step. Aye, it's fucking cheesy, isn't it? Okay, so let's just dive into a conversation with Cale of St. Asonia. Thank you so much for being here. And if you want to check out pure modern rock discovery, and I'm talking over 5,000 bands with releases no older than 2017 and 9% of the playlist since 2020, whatwasthatradio.com is a 24/7 radio station. I broadcast weekdays at least 2 or 3 times a week in between my job stacking produce at Quality Foods to make sure I can grow this independent station and my baby, my passion niche project. I worked in modern rock radio, for those that don't know, for over a decade at a station on Vancouver Island, although originally from England. And that's a great place to dive into everything and see how I split everything 50-50. I'll say everything a third time in quick succession in order to fund the Arts Academy and the foundation and independent musicians around this planet that have galvanized my soul. So, whatwasthatradio.com is your friend to dive into modern rock discovery. Here's a conversation with Cale of St. Asonia.
Hey, man.
Hello, Cale. How are you?
Well, John, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I got my tea ready. I'm not sure. Are you in Toronto or Vancouver today?
Just outside Toronto in a town called Peterborough.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, we got a friend of ours, Perch Life, watching from Kitchener, not too far away, but
Nice. Yeah, it's not far at all. Where are you at? In Victoria?
yeah, Victoria on Vancouver Island.
Beautiful, man. It's a good spot to be.
Yeah, I mean, and the long story short, firstly, Cale, because context is important, is that I did work, if you're familiar with the Zone at 91.3 on Vancouver Island, I worked there for a decade,
Okay.
originally from England, and moved across to Canada about nearly 13 and a half, I think nearly 14 years ago. My grandmother was from Shawnigan Lake on the island. I've got family everywhere. They're all over Ontario and Peterborough, Kingston, North
Nice.
Bay, Englehart, Toronto, obviously, everywhere. So when she passed away years ago, we had a quick get together and I discovered a bunch of family that honestly I'd never met most of them, and all sort of second and third cousins. And I ended up backpacking across Canada and have been making radio demos since I was a kid. You're not going to get a radio gig when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And gave out demos to The Edge and to Sonic in Edmonton. And now there's a Sonic in Vancouver that launched this morning as well. And then to Fox and the Zone and everything like that. So
Yeah.
I ended up at the Zone for 10 years. And then when the pandemic hit, long story short, I was seeking more growth. And I thought, I'm going to step back from this amazing adventure in commercial radio and build a true modern rock niche station. And so with bands like St. Asonia, What Was That Radio? Nothing is older than the 2017 release. There's over 5,000 bands. 9% of the playlist are releases since 2020 alone. And it's not got that usual mainstream small playlist and heavy and low rotations. It's just everyone, if you make the list, you're in it. And the algorithm I've built just makes sure that there's no repeats of artists for 6 or 7 hours a day. And it is just constant new music. So
That's amazing, man. We need more people like you pushing good new stuff. It's hard to find too many cool stations these days, I feel like, you know?
yeah, and I think to be honest with you, Cale, it's just sort of projecting where technology is going to go. I think within 5 to 7 years from now, every single car will have a built-in digital radio, and there won't be necessarily the FM AM dance anymore. And that's where I believe that for me to learn and grow, I am not the finished article or the messiah of rock radio. I'm just a passionate fucking nerd that loves connecting with people like yourself and getting to know about people like yourself. And so I believe that in 5 or 6 years, when I've built this to have a really solid foundation, it'll be ready to then start to show off, and it will be more easy to connect with than necessarily searching out and worrying about your data and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, I love it, man. That's great. Pretty cool. You got lots of family in Canada here too. That's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's really fortunate. I mean, they're all like second, third cousins, but I just say everyone is family. We're all family, and they've shown me all over the place. And I've obviously the West Coast. It's hard not to fall in love with Vancouver Island, especially. So
Yeah, I used to live out in Whistler and Squamish and stuff for a bunch of years. It's a
yeah,
beautiful.
and I thought that's what we could sort of touch on first. Really, is just when you were
Sure.
out here and what brought you here. But actually, maybe the first thing I wanted to spin into it was that when I was perusing through your Instagram. And
Mhm.
right back at the start of the lockdowns, and we were all sort of falling into these social media games, and you did your favorite, 10 inspirational records in 10 days.
Right.
And half of those bands are tattooed on my arm that are some of my favorite bands of all time. You referenced Queens of the Stone Age, System of a Down, Alice in Chains.
Oh yeah.
And so I love to sort of pick the pockets of musicians and understand, well, what influenced you beyond those? If you trace that back even earlier into little Cale, little baby Cale, if we can say that,
Yeah.
what were those first instances where you were like, damn, what is this?
Yeah, I mean, that's all the music that I grew up on for sure. It came from a very musical family where my mom's a player and a singer, and my older brother taught me to play, and my uncle was in a band, cover band that toured around Ontario and played. I mean, my dad loved music, so I grew up on like CCR and like Robert Cray and Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray and and lots of blues guys like that. Um, yeah, just a bit of everything, lots of Springsteen and lots of Beatles. My mom's a massive Beatles fan. We're kind of all over the place, just anything that was good. There's always music playing at home and stuff. So, I still love all those bands to this day. I just throw on Strong Persuader from Robert Cray, once a month or something. It's such a good, cool record. And yeah, and then I guess around high school, I just got really into the whole grunge scene. A lot of those bands that we're talking about, Alice in Chains, one of my favorite bands ever for sure. But love Nirvana and Pearl Jam and yeah, System of a Down, and just got into the heavier stuff around that. Finger 11. I was just thinking of them because I put them on my one of my top 10 albums. They're just a killer Canadian rock band from up the road in Burlington here. Yeah, man, just I mean all kinds of good music, but we play mostly that kind of crunchier, grungier stuff these days.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, what's always been so fascinating for me in music is how the way that my mind works, which is that it is constantly analyzing everything around me,
Yeah.
and there's multiple chains of thoughts going off all the time, and so I'm always seeking for ways that I can remember impactful moments, and so I note down. I mean, I'm bipolar, and so I go through waves of anxiety, and after 20 years of working on it, it's a long story, but I had some very horrible things happen to me when I was 10 years old.
Right.
And so that meant that I grew up in my teenage years just trying to find who I am. And I would go through, am I a prog rocker? Am I emo? Am I punk? Am I metal? And I love anything that has any sort of anything that's rock, anything that's got any kind of guitar in it, to be frank with you. But
Yeah.
it was a sort of shape-shifting teenage years and trying to figure out. And so when I dive into a question that's been asked multiple times, that you've probably been asked multiple times about, okay, well, what's the inspiration here? It's because I think back to birthdays and Christmas presents where I would get a Beatles record, and my grandparents and parents made sure that every year that I got older, I got a Beatles record, and it wasn't necessarily in order, but their order of what was their favorites, whether it's Sergeant Pepper's first and then Revolver second and then so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so when I think back to when I first passed my driving test on my 6th attempt and I got my CD auto changer because I was a fucking badass, and I filled that 12-disc auto changer with
Oh,
I had
that's a beauty.
Thrice in it and Finch in it and Hypnotize and Mesmerize, and
Yeah.
I think even Slipknot at the time, because I was starting to think I could get really fucking angry if I wanted to, and
Yeah.
they're going to lead me the way.
Yeah.
So I always latch onto those memories of just driving around in the middle of nowhere England in tiny lanes where the car is only big enough for a car, and if you're not quick enough, then you're going to go boom bang, and
Uh,
having Mesmerize just blaring through to deafening levels.
like driving way too fast, no doubt, listening to that record.
Yeah, because they're just, I mean, it's like I watched a conversation that Ruben did, speaking about them and how what attracted him to them in the first place was just that they just turned everything on its head. They didn't give a damn about any kind of norm when it came to that type of music.
Man, he's made some good records, right? Rick Rubin. I always wonder how he, chooses. I assume he gets to choose who he works with for the most part. He's such a heavyweight, but just like those records, and then he's doing Tom Petty records, and he's all over the map. Just makes fucking great records with everybody.
Yeah, I would love to just sit in a studio and just observe the energy that he curates, because it seems that a lot of the time
Me too. Yeah.
he allows an artist, it seems, to walk to the edge, and then he's like, well, hang on a second, I got a thought about it now that we're here, but he doesn't interrupt too much before. It's fascinating though, because everyone's so unique.
Yep.
Have you got like a list of people that you would love to just shoot the shit with? It's like you played that massive festival only a few months ago in Florida, didn't you? And some of the names on that bill, from Guns
Yeah.
N' Roses all the way down.
Yeah.
How do you, this is not your first foray into music. You know, you've been playing for many years. You've been in some great bands. Do you still get those butterflies? You're in that sort of setting, and do you try and find, can I find Dave Grohl? Can I find Slash?
No, I don't really go looking for people. And I mean, I don't often get the butterflies or get starstruck or anything like that. The only time I can really recall where that happened was with Scott Weiland when he was touring Canada with Velvet Revolver. And I think that's when, I think 3 Days was opening up. And that was on the very first 3 Days Grace album way back. And I was teching with 3 Days. But just seeing Scott kicking around backstage and stuff, he wasn't much to talk to at the time. He was kind of floating around and in a bit of a weird place. But he's, off the top of my head, that's the only time where I've ever been like, holy shit, that's Scott Weiland. Like, I fucking love this guy. I would really love to hang out with him a little bit, I find that most times, like, if you run into people backstage at those big festivals and stuff, everyone's super cool. Generally, you'll see them at catering, getting a coffee or getting some dinner or whatever, stuff like that. But everyone for the most part is just super cool and just friendly. Have a quick chat and maybe tell them you're a fan or something if you want to, and move on. But yeah, lots of killer musicians out there. I mean, bunch of people that I wish I had met at one time that have passed over the last bunch of years, which is a bummer. Chris Cornell and Chester and stuff like that. But yeah, we got another festival coming up a couple weeks here, so we'll see. Maybe we'll run into somebody cool backstage there at that Incarceration down in Mansfield, Ohio is our next gig. I think it's at the prison where they did Shawshank Redemption, if you know that movie.
No way. Wow, that's
Yeah.
legendary.
Yeah, it should be pretty cool. It's a big rock festival. I assume it's outside on the prison grounds or something. But
Wow, that's fascinating.
yeah, it's wild. It's pretty heavyweight lineup down there too. I think that's July 16th, I guess.
I want to make sure that we don't sort of zoom past the Finger 11 note in your top 10 there, which was actually the very first radio station event that I did at the Zone when I got hired 12 years ago, was that Finger 11 came and played a secret show in the gym, in like the dance hall underneath the radio station.
No way.
And yeah, Rich and the guys were also wonderful. They hung out for hours and hours and hours.
Right.
And I actually have that signed poster probably under the stairs with, because I've moved in with my partner a year and a half ago and we're still finding our flow, and I've brought all my signed posters and I've got them ready to put up somewhere. But that was the first event I did, and I was like, wow, if these are Canadian rock stars, everything's going to be okay, because
for sure,
these guys are so cool, but they're so badass at the same time.
That was where you're at now in Victoria? They're out there?
Yeah, that was just, when I used to work at the Zone across town here. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's the first event.
Yeah, great dudes. Pretty wild. It's Rich was the original drummer from Saint Asonia too.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
After he split Finger 11 and Adam got Saint Asonia rolling, he was in for the first record. He's a great dude, great drummer.
And so when you were back in Vancouver and Whistler all those years ago, was that to chase music or just being young and wanting to travel the country?
That was just to smoke weed and snowboard.
There we go. Keep it fucking simple, man.
Yeah, we're I'd be back in Ontario every summer, and I'd work and make money, and then I'd buy my season's pass for Whistler, and then we'd just live out there for 6 months in a big crash pad. We'd have like 12 people in a big house with 5 bedrooms or whatever. There'd be people sleeping under the pool table and shit, and we'd just go up the hill and ride every day. I mean, we were working on music at the time, living with my older brother, and he's a great player, and so we were always playing at nights and stuff. But didn't have a band going at the time or anything like that. That's a while back, like before I joined Thornley and started touring with 3 Days and all that stuff.
So probably about 20 years ago-ish?
Yeah, I'd be pushing 20, I think. Yeah.
Which is not some strange flex or shame. It's just reality. Because it's so bonkers to me to think that I've been here nearly 13, 14 years, you know.
Oh, yeah.
The 40s are close, and it's like, holy shit, so much has happened in just 10, 12, 13 years here, let alone the 15 years prior of growing up.
Yeah, it's wild to think about, right? Time flies by so quick, but thinking about it in terms of bands, music, and records and stuff, it's like, you know, did a bunch of gigs for a long time, been with Saint Asonia for the last 3 or 4 years, which is killer, you know, to be playing with Adam finally. It's always something we always wanted to do and never really had the chance when he was rolling with 3 Days and I was rolling with Art of Dying and Thornley before that, and yeah, teching with 3 Days before that. And you know, each of those things is a chunk of 4 or 6 or like 10 years or whatever, you know.
But it's pretty fascinating to look back at that journey. And so, okay, way back when you're teching with 3 Days Grace, you know, what have you seen? How have you observed Adam? Because Adam has been so open and honest. That's something that I've always appreciated about his writing anyway, is that there are a lot of artists that will say, well, here's a song and I'm going to let you just decide. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can let the emotion of the individual pull themselves into a song and decide how it affects them. But with Adam, and especially with these new singles coming up, Introvert tomorrow, in saying, well, my father's passing and me feeling like, wow, we're inside. How do we got to go deep inside ourselves and extrapolate information and try and understand who we are and what we stand for. And then I've always loved that perspective that he writes from. But before we dive too deep into that, what I find so interesting about you is that you've got all these years of being in and around this world that you knew and that you wished to stand on the stage with them. Was there a chance when you first started teching? Was there a chance to be in other bands at the time, or did you choose to go, I want to learn how this shit works, and then bring that growth into what I'm doing? How did that sort of come to be in the beginning?
I mean, it kind of just fell in our lap. I feel like, you know, it was basically right out of high school. So all of a sudden 3 Days had been, you know, they were in a band in high school called Groundswell, and then that fell apart, and the three of them, Brad, Adam, and Neil, moved to Toronto and started 3 Days Grace, and they were slugging it out, working shitty jobs, trying to make something happen for a year or two. And they were real close to packing it in, and just a couple of the guys had normal, real jobs, and they were getting close to the end of trying, I think. And then they met this dude named Gavin Brown, Canadian guy who had a publishing deal with EMI. And that was kind of their foot in the door, you know. They wrote some songs with him and did some demos and shit, and then signed a deal with EMI and got them a record deal and stuff. So all that stuff kind of happened pretty quick. When it started to roll, it happened fast. And then all of a sudden they were doing showcases to get that record deal in, a bunch in Toronto, and they did one down here in Peterborough and stuff. But like super last minute, Adam's like, dude, I need a guitar tech. We got to look pro here, you know, and I know how to play and stuff. I'd never teched a gig or anything. I'm like, I'll do it, man. I'll give it a go. But, and that's kind of just how it began. You know, I'm a lefty player and Adam's a righty player. So I didn't realize at the time that when I tuned his guitar upside down, it'd be just mildly out of tune.
Oh, no.
yeah, you got to tune it strapped on right-handed, but figured that one out after a couple gigs. And it just kind of happened, you know. They did some showcases as I helped out teching, and then they signed a record deal and made a record and hit the road, and they just hit the road super hard. That record really took off. Obviously, it started blowing up all over the world. So I think when we first started touring, it was supposed to be a month or 2 months in North America kind of thing, but then they started adding shows everywhere, and I think we're out for almost like 3 years straight. I think it was like 2.5 years straight, just everywhere in Australia and Brazil and the UK and Yeah, so that's how that one kind of came to be. At the time, it was great because I was making way better money than I ever had before, and touring with a rock band on a bus. I was like, I could run a bus, cruising around. This is awesome. And we're all, me and Adam are family, obviously, but I was super tight with Brad and Neil as well. Me and Neil went to public school together, and and met Brad in high school when I moved out to Norwood, where those guys got together. So yeah, we just had a blast. It was just, we're kind of just rolling with it, having fun. And then it was between the first two records for those guys. When we came off the road, they were working on a new record, and Adam's manager actually was managing a dude named Ian Thornley as well, who used to have a band called Big Wreck, but he did a solo thing called Thornley, and they needed a bass player. So he reached out to Adam and said, any good bass players for Ian? And he said, yeah, and sent him my way, and that was that. I just started rolling with those guys and played bass in Thornley for like 5 years after that, and then just kept it rolling.
I fucking love Thornley and Big Rex so much. My Canadian cousins here. So one Christmas about 22 years ago, a couple of cousins who had come over from Canada, and I'd met them once when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and they'd come for Christmas, and they brought these huge presents, fucking boxes as tall as me, like these 6-foot boxes. And, I'm at the time, I'm like 10, maybe in between. Yeah, no, so I met them when, my brother, so I was about 10 in the Scotland thing. So yeah, it's in around that same time. So it's about 10 or 11 or 12. And when you say to a kid, don't you fucking touch that. You don't, no, that's a mysterious box. Don't even sniff it.
Yeah,
and
don't even look at it.
So we were hanging out for like 3 or 4 days at my grandparents' house, having a great time. And every day I'm trying to sneak over and see what's in this box, and I'm getting found out. And then on Christmas Day, we open it, and it is a box with paper cutting after paper cutting and a can of Heinz baked beans in it. That was it.
No.
In a 6-foot box.
Just newspaper and
just newspaper, like the ultimate trolling the kids. But skip forward a few months, the sister of that person who gave that gift, she felt it was so fucking cheeky that she sent some Canadian offerings, and she sent Big Shiny Tunes.
Okay.
And that's how I was like, who the hell is Big Wreck?
Yeah, no doubt.
Right, with that song. And I mean, that Big Shiny Tunes, those first 2-3 compilations are just legendary.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is my childhood. And that's so amazing. I know damn well who Thornley is. But before we dive, what I love about this, though, you mentioning you being a lefty and him and Adam being a righty, there's got to be some other stories. Like, if you've been all around the world, how is it tuning a guitar here in Canada compared to tuning a guitar in Australia? I've never been to there's a lot of the planet I've not been to. You straight out of high school, you get this chance to travel and be a rock star's assistant, essentially. Yeah. Like little nerdy things like that fascinate me.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best parts of the gig, right? It's just traveling around the world and seeing a new place every day. Yeah, I just enjoyed the shit out of it back then, and I still do now, to be honest. Just whatever. I'm stoked to go to Ohio in a couple of weeks here for a festival, just because I don't know, I like traveling, I like meeting new people, and we got a bunch of dates coming up in Europe in the fall here too, in October-ish, I guess. So we're going to go to a bunch of cool places that we haven't toured full band, Poland and Czech Republic and spots like that. We're all super looking forward to that. Yeah, man, I feel pretty lucky to have just had the opportunity to kind of present itself. I mean, we've been working hard at it as well, so it's not like it completely just fell in our laps or anything, but still feel pretty fortunate just that things have gone as they have gone and we're able to do it, right?
Yeah, and I was watching a chat that Adam had with a few different publications about the formulation of this record and the EP Introvert that's out July 1st tomorrow for those of you that have recently joined us. Thank you. And obviously the process has been very different with the pandemic, but how does it differ to what you've been in the band for nearly 4 years, as you had referenced not long ago? What's your role been in the creation of songs? Adam sits in his room, he creates, then he shares stems or he shares a full song, or what's the process that you go through as a band?
Yeah, I mean, most often it's been Adam and Mike probably a little more Adam, but also a bunch of Mike, especially on Flawed Design there. That might have been 50-50 between the two of them. I joined like right before we recorded that record, so I played on it. But generally, yeah, one of those guys will send through a demo if they got an idea for this, and it might be a half done, but more often it's probably 80% done or something. And if everybody's on board and everybody likes it, then we'll run with it. And maybe if you got any ideas, it's very open. Like nobody is like, this is my song, this is the way it is, or anything like that. It's very open to input and that kind of thing. So, and then once we actually get in the studio, I mean, often you'll get to the studio and the song might still be at 80% or whatever, but we'll sit down with the producer and with the whole band actually in the room and just hammer out a bridge or something if you need a bridge, or maybe tweak the structure a little bit or something like that. Yeah, the Introvert, the EP that's dropping tomorrow, is everybody is shipping around ideas from home, obviously all via email, especially with Mike being down in the States. He's in Connecticut, and yeah, so kind of the same, we're firing around ideas, building demos with, often everyone will have their input on their parts and stuff. I can play some bass parts at home or send an idea that I have over to Adam, and if he digs it, then maybe he'll put a melody on it and send it over to Cody to put drums on it and that kind of thing. So we did tons of that during the pandemic. I mean, at the time we were really planning on writing to get into the studio right away, because we had just released Flawed Design right before the pandemic hit there. We did, and we had the full year of touring booked. We did one festival in Oklahoma City, and then the whole world shut down there. So we're just kind of waiting it out, as was everybody, not knowing how long this COVID-19 thing was going to last for. But as time passed, we just kept throwing around ideas, and then all of a sudden we're like, well, it's been a year and a half or something. It's not looking good for touring Flawed Design like we'd planned. So we might as well jump back into the studio. So we hooked up with this good producer from Toronto named Anton DeLost, who's done some cool stuff lately. Great dude. And he's got his own little studio in Toronto. So we hooked up with him. We just went up there and grabbed an Airbnb and stayed up in the city, and hammered out the rest of a few tunes and just got right into recording what became Introvert. And we also have another EP in the can as well. Actually, not many people know that, but we've recorded a second one as well that I don't know exactly when we'll be dropping that one, considering Introvert doesn't come out till tomorrow. But we got plenty of new music and we're ready to roll here. So we're really looking forward to getting it out there tomorrow and getting back on the road. We've really been missing touring and playing live. So we're just starting to get back into the groove there lately. We had a handful of shows over the last couple of weeks, and we got festivals all through July. And I think we're looking at a club tour in August or September-ish beyond that.
Sweet. Was it, because I have to admit, when I first heard that you were doing the Weekend cover, I was unsure, but Adam's voice is just so powerful. Adam's always had such a, how's the way to describe it? It's like people that are into peanut butter, I'm not at all. They get the crunchy or the no crunchy. Yeah. And they can get thick or they can get smooth. But what Adam's always done so interestingly to me is he can go between thick, smooth, crunchy, no crunch, but he will keep that depth of tone the whole way through. Yeah. If that makes sense. And so when I saw the Weekend cover come about, I was like, oh my God, where the fuck did this come from? Was Adam like, I want to do this cover, Wet the Whistle, maybe we'll do an EP? Did that start the process, or was it just was it part of the process for the new Introvert?
It was, before we decided to go in and record an EP with Anton, we obviously been discussing it with the label around Spine Farm, and they wanted a cover on the EP. I think it's just a common thing to do these days. It's kind of a cool, we're not opposed to it at all. We've been talking about we're always talking about songs that would be cool to cover. So they wanted a cover, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. And as we were demoing ideas from home and stuff, Blinding Lights had never crossed our mind at all. We had some different ideas, and we actually had demoed up Ordinary World, I think, is the one that we're going in there most likely to record, which is a great old kind of classic tune. We had it demoed up nice, and we're all ready to go in and record it. But when we were actually sitting in the studio with Anton, and it just started to feel like maybe it was not the right song. I mean, we didn't actually start tracking it or anything, but we were just sitting around discussing it. And Anton was like, why are we doing this song again? Like, great tune, and we love it, but I don't know, it wasn't seeming to translate for a few different reasons. So we literally sat around that day in the studio and brainstormed, kind of cool things that we could do, and getting some ideas. And I think it might have been Cody that mentioned it. I think we were just talking more than anything, but we're discussing, like, I don't know, would it be cool to do like a pop song that is not heavy and just heavy it up a little bit? And we're all on board with that, and we're just throwing around ideas. I think Cody blurted out Blinding Lights by the Weekend, which, I mean, I love that tune. We all love that tune. It's a great song, obviously, and he's a Toronto guy too, and which just seemed to fit. So Anton was on board with it. He thought it was a great idea. So once we started just toying with it a little bit, and it was working, we just rolled with it.
Do you know if The Weeknd has heard it at all? And pardon me for not triple checking before I asked that question.
You know what? I have no idea. I don't know. I haven't really heard anything about that. So I would imagine he's come across it somewhere, or somebody's commented about it or something, but I really don't know.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
I'd love to see him, the next Super Bowl, he can bring Adam out, and there can be 100 Adams dressed, 100 impersonator Adams, like sort of fucking Hunger Games meets, no, not Hunger Games. What is it that we were watching Mr. Beast do his spin-off of last night, the South Korean show?
Oh, I know the one you mean.
What is it?
That's the most popular show on Netflix.
Yeah. I've had a complete brain fart, but yeah, I just couldn't help but.
I know the one you mean. I can't think of the name of it either. I haven't actually seen it, but yeah, that's the plan. Super Bowl 2023, that's happening. So
yeah, there we go. Squid Games. Jody says in the chat, Squid Games. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Squid Games. There you go. Yeah.
So you were saying then that you've already got another EP in the bag. Why keep them separate? Does the band approach releasing from a sort of thematic point of view? Do you feel that maybe this set of songs don't match the Introvert set of songs that are out tomorrow, July 1st, or why keep them separate? Or maybe hold it in your back pocket to gear up for potentially announcing that tour that you alluded to about 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously through some chats with the label, I think they got us leaning towards the EP idea, and we discussed it, and it seems to be a very reasonable way to do things these days, just the way people are consuming their music and stuff. I mean, a lot of people are just on their iPhone listening to the current single, and it just seems to be the way that music is heading. So it feels to me like it's a step in that direction, where maybe just to keep it more interesting and more, and to release records more often, like maybe we release an EP once a year as opposed to a full length every 2 or 2.5 years might make a little bit more sense. It's not something that we've done before with Saint Asonia, so we're definitely on board to give it a try. Yeah, it certainly wasn't for lack of tunes or anything like that. We've got lots of songs kicking around, and obviously we've recorded 2 EPs now, so we'll see what happens. But I think down the road there might be put them all together with some extra songs and have a full length that way or something like that.
And have you always been flexible with just moving with the times? Because I've been able to speak with a lot of bands over the last decade plus, and there are some that don't want to flirt at all with this every second week release a new single for 3 months leading up to a record. There are others that obviously completely embrace it and understand that the way these new algorithm worlds are working and how we can try and connect with potential audiences. Have you always been open to let's just try it? What's your view on that? Because it's changed so much. You think back to your early days in teching with 3 Days Grace, and then Thornley and Art of Dying, and now this is a whole new landscape of consumption.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah, it's always ever changing. It's a different world than it was. It's not like the big record label, massive recording, cash advance budgets and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a different world. Yeah, I'm completely open to it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, whatever is gonna get the music out there and make it most accessible and whatever's going to be best for the fans, I guess at the end of the day is I'm totally on board with it. I mean, it's similar for us. We're still writing and recording probably the same amount of music, but the way it gets released there, I think we'll leave that up to the labels and management and stuff to hammer out the details like that for the most part, I think.
And I just want to check on time because we're in and around the time that I was allowed with you. Have you got anyone else to speak to, or are you okay for another 5-10 minutes or so?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Because Spine Farm, I think, is such a fucking great label. Spine Farm has got their finger on the pulse. Like every band that's affiliated with that label is played in What Was That. Some of the most exciting bands on the planet for me. I mean, that's essentially what Was That is building. And it's, again, like we spoke at the start of this about the bands that we have a common ground in loving with Alice in Chains, The System of a Down, and etc. You know, when I backpacked this country years ago and I heard The Zone playing Metallica and then Daft Punk and then LCD Sound System and then Tool, I was like, this is my kind of thing. Rage Against the Machine and Pearl Jam, etc. But there are only, and it's just to be clear here, I'm not trying to spin you into saying anything bad about radio. I love radio. I've stepped away from the very closed playlist of only 200 songs around that. Most commercial stations in radio in Canada only play around 200 songs, maybe 250 max in rotation. Whereas What Was That is 5,000. So all these bands speak to me, and I feel are just as good or deserve a spot. But obviously, it's a very different situation. I respect commercial radio, what they're doing. What Was That is very different. It's purely modern rock. But with Spine Farm Records, to bring it back to that, two of their most recent bands in Broken Love, led by Justin Ben Lolo, who's just an unbelievable talent. And then also Kid Capici, if you've not heard of Kid Capici yet, these English guys from England, from Hastings, they are those two bands for me.
Yeah.
I mean, Saint Asonia, I put in a different bracket in Spine Farm because Saint Asonia, that's a collective of guys that have been around the world multiple times, have got so much experience. These two are at the very start of their career.
Yeah.
And I just am so excited by both of them. So if you've not heard of Kid Capici, you must dive into them.
I'm going to write it down and check it out. Yeah, I'm always looking for good new stuff.
Really, really good. Modern rock, English guys. They cannot stand the government, and they let you know about that.
Is that right, huh?
Very effectively. They're a working class band. They're a blue collar band, and they write primarily from the standpoint of being from a small sort of resort town that has been left behind, and so how people are working their backsides off for very little they're not even being supported anymore. A lot of things have obviously closed down, and different industry goes to Brighton or to other towns that are more sellable. Right. And so they write from that standpoint of like how hard everyone's working in these small communities and how they can offer so much. If I had to wrap up the lyrical content, but the way that they do it is so sharp and intelligent. And Jack, they're just, you got to check them out. But Broken Love, have you met them yet? Have you played with them yet?
You know what? I was just talking about Anton, who produced our Introvert EP. He did Broken Love as well. So we chatted with him a fair bit about those guys. And I actually saw them in Peterborough here, where I live right now. I mean, this is just before the pandemic as well, I think. They were opening for a band called Royal Tusk.
From Edmonton,
Yeah, from Edmonton, exactly. And those guys are cool.
Yeah.
So, me and Cody actually went down to this tiny little place in Peterborough called the Gordon Best Theater and we went to see Royal Tusk, but saw Broken Love open up, and they're a killer band. That dude can really sing. Yeah,
his pipes are fucking insane, Justin's.
Yeah.
I don't know if he takes them out of his chest and then they lift weights as well, his lungs, or if he's just
right.
God, the guy is just fucking ripped. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, totally.
Like when I spoke with him, we spoke for a few hours a few months ago, and he was like, I don't work out too much. I'm like, Justin, come on.
Bullshit.
Come on. You can't play that rock star bullshit with me, man. You chiseled angel.
Off camera, he's just like...
like he's lifting weights with one and he's fucking vape with the other. Vape. It's a weight vape afternoon. But you were saying, I feel like 20, 25 minutes ago about finally getting a chance to work with Adam.
Yeah.
Was it just a case of, okay, this is pretty simple now, let's just do it? Or was it like, hey, so I saw, and I'm sorry, but it's time? How did you approach that joining of Saint Asonia?
Yeah, it was the second time Adam had come to me being like, you got to come play bass in San Antonio. And the first time I couldn't do it because I was with Art of Dying. We just signed a record deal with Better Noise, and we're actually in the studio with David Bendeth, and I'm just like, I just can't bail right now. I mean, it's always something we've talked about, and we always play acoustic together, and he used to host open stages together and stuff in Toronto, and something we always wanted to do. And I had no doubt that it was going to happen at some point. But before Flawed Design there, yeah, when he came to me again, that was just an ideal time. Art of Dying was kind of taking a break, kind of still is on a break. Those guys are playing with some other bands and keeping busy at home. And it was just an easy, instant, yes, it's time, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked out. And it's everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, man, we're super stoked on it. Feels like the perfect situation we're in right now. Adam and Mike is just cool as shit, and he's been around and been doing it for ages with Stain and stuff. He's a great player. He's a great dude. And Cody's one of my real good friends. He's from around here as well. He's super stoked to be a part of it. So, I mean, it just feels like the perfect situation we're in right now, making good music and having a blast doing it. So, yeah, everyone's real happy with where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, just before I turned 20, I spent an awful lot of money at the time for being a 19-year-old stacking produce, but to go
Right.
to go up to London and to watch Stained. And how has it been? Had you met Mike before this project?
Yeah, just briefly, like I think when 3 Days was doing shows with Stained back on that first record.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we never, it's not like we were hanging out or anything, but we'd maybe a little chatting backstage and stuff. And then on the first Saint Asonia album, when I was able to get out and see them do a couple shows, I remember seeing them at the amphitheater in Toronto there, and heading backstage after the show. So met him a few times in the dressing room and stuff like that. But yeah, we didn't know each other super well or anything. But I talk to Adam all the time, and he just told me what a solid dude he is, and he was right. He is.
Yeah, he just seems so, I've never met him, never spoken to him, but he just seems so calm and so warm.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he is so angry when he starts moving his fingers.
Yeah, he's a heavyweight player. He's very. You're right. He's got a very angry tone. He's got his own unique style and his own unique sound. I think he plays this custom Paul Reed Smith 7-string that's with a low ass A sharp underneath it, and some of the chords he makes are very distinct and unique sounding and angry sounding.
Yeah, it reminds me of many years ago. I went. It's a long story that we won't get into the whole thing, but I basically followed like a life coach to India.
Wow.
And so how to unpack this? So as I'd said earlier in this conversation, when I was 10 years old, I had something bad happen to me. So I was sexually abused by strangers when I was 10. And so that's why I spent years being petrified of physicality. I would spend years crying when it rained because they also tried to make sure I couldn't tell anyone.
Right.
And so when I moved to Canada because I was like, I know who I am underneath all these different Johns and layers of John, that someone knew this story or someone didn't know that, and mum knew this and dad didn't know that. I love my parents very much, but family members didn't know this. And it was exhausting. And I felt like I was never actually going to achieve what I wished to achieve if I didn't fucking sort myself out, ground and stabilize my mindset. And had tried to not be around a few times in my teenage years. And so I thought, well, I met all these Canadian family. They seem so awesome. Let's just get out of this English bubble for a year and see what I can do. And 12 years later, I've been here and I've grown up so much and learned so much about myself. But about 9 years ago, I had done this very intensive day that a friend of mine encouraged me to do to try and release these demons of these, because I think the biggest thing for me is I never knew who these people were. I never saw who those people were.
Really?
And so it was the unknown. A lot of people sometimes know who their attacker is, or they might have gone on a date with them before, or they were approaching them at a club or something. They're like, no, no, no. But I had no idea what this was. And so I was so inspired by this day that we did in a Burnaby gym called the Warrior Sage that I followed this person to India on this sort of week and a half to the Kumbh Mela, which is one of the biggest gatherings of humanity on the planet. Every 120 years, the moon, earth, and Saturn align in a way that the Sarasvati joins the Ganges rivers. And many believe that if you go there, long story short, and I'm laughing because I'm just like, I haven't spoken about this in a while. And it's just like, I could speak for about 8 hours of this trip to India because it was fucking mind blowing and life changing. And I remember following this guy. And to get to my point here is that about halfway through the trip, I heard the life coach arguing with his wife. And up until that, he'd been all, respect each other and be calm. And I'm always calm. And I'm like, no, not everyone can do that all the time. There's going to be moments where frustration might get the better of someone. It's how you deal with that in that moment and afterwards. And I could hear him, on the other side of the campsite, just shouting like, I'm going to do this, not going to do that. And I thought, oh, fucking hell. I just had to sell my car in England to fucking fund this trip. I guess I'm going to live in Canada permanently now. And this life coach is screaming at his wife. Is this the guy that I meant to follow here? I don't know if it is. So I start, I take growth with a pinch of salt. Now, my point being, and this is not to set up Mike to be some giant asshole at all, but that's where I get so intrigued because in all these chats, in the video rundowns, or the song rundowns that you put on the YouTube channel, there's this warmth and this purity to Mike. But then he creates these tones, as we've discussed, that are so edgy. That there's that how this is where the little kid in me wants to soak up and learn from someone like Mike. Like, how is he keeping himself so balanced and so prolific to create? That's what's so fascinating to me.
It is. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out too. He's just super good at what he does. And that's the style of music that he loves, obviously. But yeah, you're right. He's a very kind and warm and yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just the way he's wired,
There's a lot of rock stars that you look at, and I'm not going to say names, but you look at them and go, fuck, I wouldn't trust that person. But when you look at Mike, you think, oh my God, I mean, he's going to cook us dinner. Like, he looks like, come on, like, let's go. Let's have a mixer. Don't worry about it. But then if we segue away from Mike and back to you, because this is a big thing that fascinates me as well, is that I've stepped out of security. I've stepped out of a really well-paying job with great retirement scheme plans, with great healthcare and coverage. I've stepped away from that to grow what was at radio and to have none of that anymore. Certain access, certain... Very grateful to Looters, by the way, for enabling me to have these conversations with people like yourself and Natasha and Sarah that believe in my conversation technique, I suppose, and just who I am and what I'm trying to do. But it's been a massive fucking test of staying grounded, because I left mainstream radio a lot because of the ego that goes into it and feeling like I was trying to prove to people what I don't need to prove to anyone. I just need to prove to myself that I'm having fun and happy and growing. And it's been a big challenge staying mentally stable. There have been breakdowns. There have been sad, difficult days. You've been a working touring musician for an awful long time. And then with the pandemic thrown in, how have you retained sanity? What practices have you matured over the years, or none at all? You might just be fortunate that you can just handle the shit. But what have you learned about yourself that you apply to these last 2 years that you didn't think you'd ever going to have to apply from your travels of teching all around the world after school to then being in Saint Asonia all these years later, 20 years later?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm maybe lucky in that way. I'm pretty very easygoing, and I'm generally just a happy guy, happy doing whatever I'm doing. Like I said, feel very lucky to be able to do what I do for a living, playing music and stuff like that. And when I'm not doing that, I'm home with my family, and that's why I live in this town I live in now. My mom's here, and my dad's right up the road, and I got my family and my brother and his kids and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very happy doing that as well. Just being home when we're not touring, just hanging with them. So when the pandemic hit and kind of screwed up the whole music thing and our tour plans and stuff, I think I've just been looking at the bright side and being like, well, this is the first summer and turned into 2 summers that I've been home in 20 years, so trying to take advantage of that, do some fun things, spend lots of time with my family, most importantly. But yeah, I guess that's that. I mean, I was missing the music and, missing your bandmates and the camaraderie that goes along with that. But just looking on the bright side and knowing that we're going to come out of this at some point. It took longer than expected, but yeah, it was a bit of a trip the last few years, same as for everybody. But yeah, I just enjoyed it and tried to make the best of it, I guess.
Did you tally how many times and how many days in a row you wore the Maple Leafs onesie that your mum got you?
Oh, you saw that, did you? Unfortunately, I only wore it for 7 games, I guess.
Yeah, fuck.
Oh, fuck, right. Brutal. I didn't feel bad about this year like I did some of those years in the past where the Leafs just didn't show up. Well, this last year against the Habs was maybe the worst, but I felt like they had a super good team this year and they played well enough to win that series. I mean, it was coin flip. So we'll get them next year.
Well, what side of the fence do you fall on? Do you fall on, fuck it, blow it up, get rid of Mitch, get rid of this? Or do you think, nah, just 2 or 3 little changes to the third, fourth line and keep the rest as it is?
Yeah, no chance blowing it up. I mean, I think anybody who's bitching about the Leafs this year is fucking insane.
Yeah, I agree.
We almost knocked off the 2-time defending champions in the first round. I mean, if Kerfoot didn't hit the knob of Vasilevsky's stick in the OT of Game 6 there, it would have been all over. But as it goes, yeah, I don't think we need to blow anything up. Maybe a couple of little tweaks. I mean, getting a little tougher, I think still wouldn't hurt. So I think we need a big power forward is what I think, like Josh Anderson maybe, or a guy like that who's a goal scorer is going to fit in with Austin and Mitch and Willie and those guys, but who's also going to get in the odd scrap and throw his weight around. I think.
Is Simmons signed for this next year, or is he done?
I think we got Simmons for one more.
Yeah, I think it was a 2 or 3, wasn't it? Because I mean, you look at Colorado, right? I mean,
yeah,
the last 3 or 4 years, you could argue, are the other side of the country, obviously down in US, but other side of the leagues, Maple Leafs who have been knocking on the door. The talent's there. It's just a case of just that's the fickle nature of professional sports, is you cannot predict anything. Like Tampa Bay tried to predict it. Pat Maroon tried to be Gretzky. He's done incredible things. Maybe he will equal Gretzky with those rings, but it's you can never really predict it. You just cannot predict it.
No, for sure. I like where the Leafs are at, and I mean, I do agree that experience in the playoffs goes a long way. Just learning how to win there. I mean, that's what everybody's said forever. And if you think of it from that perspective, then it's not surprising that the Leafs, with the young, super talented guys we have, it's not surprising they're not winning the cup in the first, few years that we're making good runs here. So I think years like this year and last year and all these past years where we've been in the playoffs and gone out early, I think those are all going to go a long way to furthering them and making it more successful next year and the year after that.
Yeah, big time. I mean, I'm just a massive sports fan. I was all the time I was trying to chase radio. I was in my back pocket as like, I'd love to do commentary one day. My parents always said, I wish that you could retain maybe some math and history after class and not come home and tell us about all the 335 soccer leagues or football leagues around the world, etc. But I mean, I've seen you on the Instagram, you Blue Jays as well. And the Blue Jays, man, what a quick turnaround the last 3 or 4 years after that last run when I first moved here with Batista and co. And Donaldson. But I mean, Vladdy 2 days ago against Boston, like I've never seen Vladdy as settled and at home as he seems now.
Yeah.
Like, this is our house. Get out of here, you Red Sox bastards. He was just so aggressive at the end of the game.
Did you see the game last night? He cleared the benches when they hit Kirk, that Pavetta. He's a Canadian guy as well, but he threw up and in on him first at bat, and then he hit him the next one. And Vladdy went on the field, and benches cleared and stuff. I love how he's so passionate about it. Speaking of that, that's the only downside to Mike. Great player, great dude, but he loves the Red Sox and the Bruins. So
Oh shit.
yeah, he's from Connecticut. So
Well, there we go.
yeah,
I'll be honest with you though. I think this is important that this fleeting friendship that will last however long this call does, and then we'll walk into the distance. And no, I mean, I say that sarcastically, but when I was in England growing up, there was very few sports teams from America that we would be able to see. So I watched a lot of Boston-based teams in any sport, basketball, football, etc., and a lot of Pittsburgh teams. So I did follow the Bruins and the Steelers for many years. And then I moved here and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to reevaluate that in Vancouver, especially being around Vancouver. It's like, you don't get to be a Bruin, you fucking asshole. I'm like, well, and I would walk around in Bruins jerseys. In my early days here, I loved, it's like one of the big things, and I spoke about this with Connor from Nothing But Thieves when he had dyed his hair blonde. And I was like, that reminds me of when I was trying to figure out my mindset, and I used to wear odd socks, and I did it because I didn't want to fucking talk to anyone, but it might initiate conversation.
Right.
And I believe in life is lived experience. So only being forced to converse with people that maybe you don't want to, are you going to get more easy and confident and able in being yourself and conversing with people. Mm-hmm. And I asked him about, is that why you dyed your hair blonde? And he was like, holy shit, it was a similar thing. So when I moved here, I thought, well, I'm going to fucking buy a Bruins jersey and I'll wear it. And that's a definite way to start a conversation. Just leave the back blank, and then you could just say, oh, I'm going to get Thomas on it, just to be current with what the playoffs are doing on this side of the country.
Yeah, to like get a Velcro name or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I mean, thank you so much for your time, Cale. I think the last thing really is just that it's been such a privilege to speak to you. I think it's a fascinating position that you've been in, where you've had this chance to go through the teching days and see a little bit, and through that, the chances with Ian and Thornley and everything else. It's just that you don't strike me as this person. It's probably just a throwaway question, but do you have bucket lists? Do you have things that with Saint Asonia or aside Saint Asonia that are like, do you know what? I want to try and do this too now.
I just want to, at this point, I think perfectly happy where we're at. I just want it to be long and great. Get some longevity out of it and do this until we can't rock anymore, get another 20, 30 years in and just keep making good music, and I'll be happy with that.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well, man. Cale, again, thank you. I really appreciate it, man.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me. It was great. You're a cool guy to talk to, and I'm good to go anytime if you want to do it again sometime.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I think it'd be great to reconnect in several months once we get this show. Oh, and that's the last thing I was going to see is that you do still have that Ukraine show listed on the website. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to tell what the hell's going to happen in 2-3 months from now.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, there was a whole month through Russia on that tour as well that we canceled. But yeah, I think the first 2 shows are Belarus and Kiev. So Minsk and Kiev. So I guess it'll be a game time decision. I mean, hopefully things chill out over there and Putin backs off and lets the people in Kiev live their fucking life. But
because that's what's so fascinating. The final thought is this, like with Brexit and everyone leaving Europe, and obviously I left England a long time ago. I didn't vote in that. I would have felt displaced, and it wasn't my decision to make, having been out of that market. If you look at it financially from my career, or if you look at it from my heart as a family, I didn't feel that I had the right to vote when I'd been so far removed for so long. But one thing that massively worried me about what happened was the connection with the arts and how difficult it is now for bands to get in or out of England to go and play music. And if there's one thing that can help the world exist, it's art. And so for you guys, hopefully to be able to go into places like Belarus and Ukraine and Russia, etc., it's paramount to humanity, I feel. It's essential for people to understand that. It's like when people ask about, where did all this great music come from in England? Well, I believe that certainly the likes of Joe Strummer, walking down Brixton and being inspired by all those that came from Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean when they were called upon as part of the empire to come and help us with our jobs after the war was done. And it brings that whole new set of music that no one knew, and it combines, oh my God, I'm going to make this sort of punk meets reggae meets, oh my God. a lot of what makes England so great is that because English leaders of the past were such fucking assholes, going around and saying we'll take care of you, we'll take care of you, we'll take care of you. But in turn, it's brought all this multiculturalism and inspiration and ability. Sure. And that is why I think England has become such a hub of art, because it's got people from all over the planet in there mixed together, creating and inspiring together. Sure. And so I really hope that these shows, my point being, happen, and that they're safe. They're safe for you and the band, and that they're safe for those that attend it. But music is such a healing and powerful tool.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, if there's any possible way that we can do it, we're going to do it. I know that. The last last 2 shows of that tour in Poland as well, which is just a stone's throw from Lviv and Western Ukraine. So, I mean, I think a lot of those people that got transplanted out of Ukraine are in Poland now. So it'd be fun to do some sort of benefit show or something like that. But I agree 100%. People need music at times like these more than ever. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that cheeky extension on the end there. I had to approach that quickly and check in with you what you were thinking about it. But it would be, again, appreciate your time. It would be awesome to maybe in 6 months or a year to check back in, maybe the next EP, and bring in Mike and just see how gentle and wonderful and warm he is. And maybe Absolutely. Cody and Adam as well. But we'll see what the universe holds for us in the future. But Cale, really fucking appreciate your time, man. Have a great rest of your day.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me. We'll see you again.
Cheerio for now.
Take care, brother.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much for watching the whole conversation. I really appreciate it. If you are right here, right now at this ending point, then please get in touch with me through whatwasthatradio.com and just say, I love cricket. Terribly random, and it'll make sense for this video. If you didn't make it the whole way here, then you wouldn't fucking know what to do, would you? Because you wouldn't be, it is, okay. Thank you again for your time. Whatever you're doing the rest of your day, and as always, please look after yourself. And I hope there's some fun and smiles involved in the rest of your day too, because we've got to cherish that positive. For now, cheerio.